So I'm Jake Rollo. I'm Communications Director for the Department of State, and Secretary Jocelyn Benson. Welcome, all of you, for being here today. We're glad you're here today. As I think you know, we are doing the random draw of voters who will receive a mailed application to participate in the redistricting process. We will be randomly selecting 250,000 voters from the qualified voter file. With me today is Stephen Bland. Stephen is with Raymond LLC, which is an auditing and accounting firm. He'll be using off-the-shelf technology that other accountants may have. I would say the general public doesn't typically have this technology, but it is available if someone wanted to have it. And he will be doing, we're doing this in the full light of day with media here, the idea being we want to carry out the will of the voters who passed the constitutional amendment, and therefore carry out the spirit of their vote, which was to execute this process, the redistricting process, with full transparency. The Constitution requires that we randomly select 10,000 voters for a mailed application. However, after talking with experts about the likely return rate on mailing these out, and knowing that we need to have at the very least 100, but ideally many more than 100, we decided, and also with some budget decisions in mind, we decided that 250,000 was a good number. No one could give us the exact number that you need to mail out for this, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough mailed applications out there to get a good response rate and to meet what is in the Constitution, which is that we would have enough applicants to get a diverse set, and I mean diverse in all sorts of ways across the political spectrum, but also geographically, demographically, so that we truly end up with a pool of 200 that is easily reflects the state's demographics, and then from that pool we will select the 13 commissioners. When I say we, I should say that actually it will be Stephen who's with us here today. Let me just see. I think that's it. Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you to carry us through the process. We will have time for questions at the end, so if you would just let Stephen do his show, which you'll all be able to see up here, and those of you sitting behind him can obviously see his computer screen too. And then, yeah, we'll close it out. Go for it, Stephen.
Very good. Good morning, everyone. So we are going to be making a statistically random draw from the qualified voter file. In order to do that, I'm going to be using a piece of software that's called Caseware IDEA. IDEA stands for Interactive Data Extraction and Analysis. This is a software package designed for CPA firms and others who need to draw random samples and do analysis as part of audit procedures. We're not using it for an audit today, but the technology should allow us to make a statistically random drawing from a fairly large database. The first step to doing that is receiving a data file, and the Elections Department brought up a sealed envelope for us that I'm going to break the seal now and pull out a flash drive that should have the current qualified voter file. So I have a flash drive here. I understand it's encrypted, and they've given me the password to decrypt it, so give me a moment while I do that. Let's see what drive letter this thing actually went to for me. All right. All right, on this flash drive we have a zip file with the entire state voter. This is the same file layout that would be used anytime someone makes a FOIA request for the qualified voter file. I'm going to copy that to my desktop, and then we'll unzip it and put the file where we can actually work with it. All right, I have a 2.6 gigabyte comma-separated value file. I am now going to copy that into the folder where source files are put for IDEA. So you can see I've got a project file created on my hard drive for IDEA projects. This is the Michigan Department of State, and I'm copying this into the source file where it will read to the database. All right, back to IDEA. Our next step is to import that file into IDEA so that it can read the information and we can make a selection from it. So I'm going to be telling it to go look for a file. There is the source file that we just brought in. It reads it as a text delimited file. The first row has our field names. And then I have the option of going through and selecting or further refining what we're bringing in. I'm just going to take all the default options, bring in every field without any change. I'm not going to add any custom fields. I'm not going to set any limits on what is imported. And it is going to import everything just as is. It's going to call it entire state voters and bring it into our project here. The import is now running, and this is the boring part while we allow a computer to think. So we'll let it run in the background for a few moments. And when it's finished, it will open the database screen and show us how many records were imported. I'm anticipating something in the 7.5 million range, but we'll see what the actual file contains in just a moment. While we're waiting for the computer to keep thinking, I will point out that in most contexts it would be unusual for IDEA to draw a sample as large as 250,000 records. Ordinarily, auditors would be picking a sample that is small enough to work with. So we actually spoke directly to the software company that produces IDEA, and they provided a script that bypasses the normal limit to keep sample sizes manageable. I will open that in a moment and show you just about a page of computer code. It won't make a ton of sense, but I'll quickly walk through the commands that are happening so everyone can see how we are making the random selection. That process will also take another minute or two to run. So I know it's not riveting news to watch a computer think, but it's what we have. All right, we have imported 7,561,516 records. That's shown right here on the left side of the screen, so a little over 7.5 million records. And it's time now to make a selection from here. I'm going to go to macros, which is where we can open the scripted language that was drafted for this purpose. So this is our script for drawing a random sample. And just very briefly to explain what's happening here, this is a function to draw a random sample. The first thing it's going to do is bring up an input box and ask us how many records we want to select. That will become the variable sample size. It will then ask for a seed. For those of you who have used a computer to draw random numbers, a computer always has the very small chance of picking the same number over and over again unless you do something to randomize it. So it will ask us to feed it a random number to start the process, to add an extra layer of randomness. And what we'll do at the time is put in the current date and time when we run it to ensure that it's a number that would not be the same. Once that's done, it will read the current database, which is the one we just imported. It will run the built-in task of creating a random sample, which is a native feature of the IDEA software. It will include all fields, and it will output a database, a new database called random sample, and that is what we will provide to the printers to make the mailing labels to send out the applications. It will then produce that, drawing as many records as we tell it, so 250,000 is what we're going to ask for. It will start with record 1 and look through the full count of number of records, so 7.5 million. It will feed in our random number seed, and then the last command here, false, says it will not allow any single record to be picked more than once. So we'll get 250,000 unique records through the process. And when it's finished, you'll see a new database on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and run that macro now on the entire state voters database. Our sample size, 250,000 records. And to feed in a random number seed, we will put in today's date, 11/19/19. My computer says the current time is 11:16 a.m. And it will sit and think for a moment. The progress meter actually moves really fast at the end and slow at the beginning, so give it a moment. When we're finished with this process, then there is a history feature. You can see off to the right under properties, the second line down is history, and we'll be able to print to PDF a document that will list out with time and date stamp every step that we just walked through, and we'll be able to provide that to the Department of State for their records. All right, a new selection has been created called Random Sample. Opening that now, you can see just the names and date of voter registration for the first 19 or so people on this list. It's a very long list. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, we'll see there are 250,000 unique records, and I'm now going to go and export this as a delimited text file. I'm going to include the field names and send this to the exports folder of IDEA. It will be called Random Sample. The extraction is running now. So a moment ago we were in the subfolder for source files. I'm now going to go to the exports directory, and here's the new file that was just exported at 11:17 a.m. The software by default exports files with an extension DEL for delimited. That's not a common file format. I'm just going to change the extension to what it really is, a comma-separated value, and that will make the file readable if it's opened in Excel or whatever the mail company uses for their printing process. The department has selected a mail provider in Detroit, Wolverine Solutions Group, that is going to handle the mailing for them, and they provided a secure share file link for me to upload this file to them. I have not tested the speed of our internet connection here, so we will find out how long this takes. Here's our export. We are exporting a 90 meg file called randomsample.csv, and it is being uploaded directly to the printer's secure share file server at this time.
I should add that both Wolverine Solutions and Raymond LLC were selected through a state procurement policy, state procurement process in coordination with our policy.
We're about half there on the upload, and as soon as this finishes, we'll switch back to IDEA and export the history file to document all the steps that were just taken, and then we'll provide a copy of that confirmation to the department for their records. Looks like our upload has completed. So the file has been sent to the printer. Switching back to IDEA, we will go over here now to the history for this database. I'm going to expand so we can see all of the tasks. One of these is expand all. There we go. Expand everything, and now I will print this to a PDF. Save this right onto the desktop. And just to recap what this file shows, that's everything we just saw. The first step we did was import a source file, entire voters CSV. That's what we got from the zip file that was on the compressed flash drive from elections. It brought in 7,561,516 records. That was the information on that was then saved to a file recording what happened. We then, this is just a repeat of that step, explaining how if you wanted to repeat it over again, what the actions would be. Then we ran the macro to select 250,000 records. Looking from record 1 all the way through the last record in there, we used a random number seed of November 19, 2019 at 11:16 a.m. Did not allow duplicate records. And having completed that step, we then exported that file to a delimited text file. And then it does not capture it here, but we then renamed that file and uploaded it to the printer. So that's a recap of the process. My part at this stage is done. I'm happy to answer questions as needed.
Yeah, so that's it. Does anyone have questions?
When are you guys mailing them out?
Just before the end of the year, so they'll likely go out in the last days of January.
December.
Sorry, December.
Sorry, what role does the Wolverine Solutions Group play?
They're the mailer.
Okay. And do you have an estimate on the costs of doing this 250 person mailing, or 250,000 person mailing as opposed to the 10,000?
It's about 25 times more. I don't have the number offhand, but I can get it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
What happens with these, like, between now and when they're mailed out at the end of the year? Are you sorting through, like?
So the mailer actually needed, because it's so many, the mailer needed time to get everything set up in their system to mail the application, format the envelopes, and get it all out.
Okay.
We gave them a little bit of padding, but yeah.
When should people respond?
They can respond as soon as they get them. I mean, we expect that they'll receive them within the first week of January. The deadline is not until June, but we would love for them to come in as soon as possible.
So they have to have them in by June?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any expectation on how many you hope to receive back?
As many as possible. It's really hard to predict. So part of why we did such a large sample size is because what experts told us is when you do polling, whether it's by mail or by phone, response rates are usually lower than 10%. We know that this is even more onerous, right? Because you have to go get it notarized. And then we need, on our side, we need enough applications that they actually meet a bunch of different demographics. We need to split along partisan lines as well as unaffiliated. So we don't know how many will come. We are hoping to get many.
Do you have any number on how many you need in order to meet all the qualifications?
Well, the bare minimum in the Constitution is we have to have 100 applicants who received the mailed application. But we know, given, it's unlikely that of those 100, they will exactly mirror the population of the state. So we're hoping for many, many more.
What happens if you don't get what you need back?
If we don't get 100 back, or if we don't get a mirrored part of the population?
Both, if you don't get what you need back.
I'm not sure what happens if we don't get 100.
The Constitution provides, processes for what happens if, is the answer to the question. Yes, I mean, the Constitution lays out if this doesn't happen, whatever else. But then I would say the only thing I would add, Mike Brady, by the way, Chief Legal Director, Department of State, the only thing I would add that what Jacob was saying is that not only is it more onerous to fill out an application and drive somewhere and or I guess they have to find a notary and all of that. There's also you actually have to want to and be willing to serve in this really important commission for a year. And so there's going to be a public meeting, it's going to be speaking in front of people, things that for some people is an incredible opportunity, for other people will be very intimidating, and they just frankly aren't interested in that, or maybe their life, medical reasons, family reasons, all sorts of other things won't allow that in this particular 14-month time frame of September 2020 until November 2021. So that's the time frame, and if you're already in, if you're scheduled for whatever reason, like in medical, family, all sorts of other things, like life happens, then you might get at the application and be like, oh, maybe in 10 years, right? So that's, I would say, a really big piece of this. And at $40,000, you can have all of that. And so, that was part of the analysis for coming up with 250. Actually, somebody told us it might be 500,000. 250 will afford in the budget. And so it's, kind of seems middle ground from the 10,000 minimum the Constitution laid out. So,
Okay, and I'm sorry, what did you say your name is?
Mike Brady.
Thank you.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
if, so let's say you get 10,000 responses back.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a similar process that the Secretary of State's office runs that they would know how to handle that many responses? Because I'm just thinking if you advertise for a job, maybe you get 500 responses back and you read through those applications. What's gonna be the process for looking at these? Is it just if they fill it out correctly, or is it?
Yeah, essentially, if we have 10,000 completed applications, we will process 10,000 completed applications, and they will go into the pool from which 200 are selected.
And Raymond does that?
Raymond will do yes. Yeah, we do the processing. Raymond does the statistical analysis and selection.
So what we're anticipating is in June, another process like this one, where we will have a different software application that will handle that process of making the random selection there. But it's not entirely random. There we have to have statistical weighting to make sure that all population groups and all demographics are appropriately represented. So what we will do at that point is similar to how it was done here. While you're all watching, will be brought a data file that contains all of the submitted applications. We'll load that in and then let the computer do the process of appropriately weighting to make sure that all the different demographics are as closely as possible mirrored after the state demographics. It will make the initial selection of 200, and then we will provide that for the next stage in the process. Then we'll come back and do it all again in August when we take it from however many of those 200 remain after the legislatures had their opportunity to look at it and make the final selection of 13. That will be truly random, and we'll probably be back to this software, which just does strictly random without any kind of additional factors taken in.
Do you have an updated count on how many people have turned in applications outside of being mailed, just people who have voluntarily wanted to turn them in?
So actual online applications that haven't been notarized yet, we're at about 6,000. And actual applications that have been notarized and come to us either by mail or been dropped off at a branch office, we're in the several hundred range. I think we're nearing 1,000. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea about what these applications or these mailings will look like so that people can look for them in their
We do.
mailboxes?
They're on our website. Correct?
Oh, I mean the envelopes, or what's going to be mailed to people? Is it a particular color? Is it going to, what can they be looking for?
We'll show
So they don't assume it's junk mail.
Sure. Yes, we can make that available.
Great.
Sure. If that's all, thank you all for coming.